And welcome to Conservatives Talk. We've got a very special guest on our show today.
Yeah, I'm really excited about it.
So we're going to be speaking with State Representative Colton Moore, a brand name here in Northwest Georgia. So definitely going to want to stick around and hear what he has to say.
See what the Senate's like.
Exactly. And as always, welcome to Conservative Talk. My name is Justin.
And this is Jamie.
And we want to take a moment to make sure we remind our viewers to make sure they're hitting the like button and the share button on any of the content they see on any of the platforms that we release our content on, as well as hit the subscribe button. That way you'll always be able to stay up to date on all of our content. You'll never miss a single moment of Jamie's incredibly infectious smile, and always be able to hear that heartwarming laughter that he so frequently has. Except for today, Jamie's in a bad mood.
I'm not in a bad mood. Just
somebody missed some sleep last night.
A lot going on.
We also want to make sure that we remind our viewers, go to our website at conservativestalk.org and hit that sponsor tab in the upper right-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner and help us out with what you're able to, because every little bit goes an incredibly long way. So eventually, Jamie and I, one of these days, being able to take over the world and correcting all rights, and correcting all wrongs, making everything right. So with that in mind, we want to say a quick welcome to State Representative Colton Moore.
Justin, Jamie, how's it going?
It's going.
It's going. Great to have you back, Colton.
Hey, it's great to be back. I tell you, I wish I had a more interesting background, but just moved into the office. We've been in session 2 weeks, and just now finally got an office.
Well, see, that's awesome though, because the last time we had you, you were just candidate, and now we get to see you from being a candidate to now being, my state senator. So I'm really excited about this one.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, it's I had an assistant to another senator tell me the other day. They're like, how would you feel if somebody told you what to do as a senator? And I said, you don't understand. The only people that tell me what to do as senator is my constituents that sent me here as a member of the Republic. So, I'm just excited to represent the people of Northwest Georgia. I mean, when you finally, get to wear the name badge as a senator, everybody wants to be your best friend down here at the Capitol. They're always running up to you. I mean, people you've never seen before, you don't know. They want to shake your hand and be your best friend. And I guess for a lot of new elected officials, that can be very difficult to overcome. But one thing for sure, I don't forget who sent me here.
Yeah, it's always interesting to see who comes out of the woodworks when you're when you get into that position of authority or rulemaking.
No doubt about it.
Yeah.
As I tell Justin, they may give you heck now, but once you're elected, they usually kiss the ring, which is kind of sad. But
no, it is. It is sad. I mean, it's like the Chamber of Commerce. The state Chamber of Commerce. They spent probably $100,000 against me in my race, but then now I get invited to every single Chamber of Commerce event there is here at the Capitol.
Ooh.
So, that's kind of an awkward meet and greet sometimes.
I can imagine. I've sat through a couple of those.
Yeah.
So Jamie and I have been talking a little bit, and we've got a couple of questions that we want to throw out towards you, because there have been some big topics and big headlines that have jumped out in the news here lately, and we really want to kind of get your insight as a Georgia state legislator and what exactly it is that is going to be going on with this.
And before we even go there, I guess I want to start off with the first one, right? Like, being a North Georgia boy with all the things that are going on in Atlanta, like the riots. Tell us from your perspective, not just being a state senator down there in the middle of this, but like just being from outside of the metro area and then seeing this.
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to my dad about this, and he goes, I guess all those hippies back when I was a kid all had offspring, and now they're the forest people down there.
That's the best way I've heard.
So
That's
I mean,
that's hilarious.
it's absolutely ridiculous what they're doing. I think of all that were arrested, there was only one from Georgia. The rest weren't even from Georgia. I mean, they came into town. They did damage to property that wasn't even associated, with their forest that they wanted to protect. I mean, they come to Deloitte, something that was ironic. And I talked about Chamber of Commerce earlier when they broke all those windows down at the bottom. The space for protest for. I mean, obviously these people, they're anarchists, they're wild, they're crazy, and I think one thing that we're going to learn from this is, we talk about, what are we doing not to defund the police, but we've been defunding the police for quite a while. I mean, think about the state trooper that got injured in this situation. Yeah. I hope that there's going to be a decent medical retirement for this state trooper. But in my district, we had a state trooper recently who's chasing this felon down the interstate. He breaks his neck, okay? And the only medical retirement the state can offer him is like $1,100 a month. Like, are you kidding me? Like, wow. I've never worn the uniform, but if we're going to expect people to put on the uniform and go out there and defend our property, I mean, let's create a medical retirement for them. And, that's something that I'm fighting pretty heavily for right now in the legislature.
Wow, so, that's awesome.
I think that's like 70% that's a 70% disability rating from the military. If you're 70% disabled from your military service, you can get roughly about $1,100 a month.
Right.
70% for a broken neck, and you never really be able to hold another functional job again.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, it's very sad. We have $6 billion. That's with a B. $6 billion in surplus in this budget. I mean, figure there's 1,000 state troopers. I think there's 700 blue shirts, maybe 300 black shirts in motor carrier compliance. Let's just say we take 60% of the salary that they're making, say up to a post commander. We're only looking at max maybe, $250 million. So 4 times 6, we could do it 24 different times over if we wanted to in this current budget. Yeah. But right now that's not an option. So we got some work to do down here.
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel like that'd be a great bill to try to put together.
I mean, the objections that I hear from a lot of other legislators are, potentially they've seen officers in the past maybe that didn't really have a legitimate disability claim take advantage of that. But I think you can clear that up maybe pretty good in the language. You've got to be in the line of duty and be injured in order to take advantage of that. I mean, I think there's solutions. But if we've got people who are chasing down the forest folks, the forest protesters, getting into live action fire, and we don't have medical retirement for them, we got a problem.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. I mean, there's a specific form in the Army that is referred to as an LOD, a line of duty form. And I mean, that is critical to you getting and receiving your disability compensation.
Yeah, I'd love to see you or, maybe another senator from this area sponsor something like that. I mean, I think that.
I mean, and it goes, without saying, even our sheriff's deputies and our jailers as well. Like we as a state mandate that they do certain services for us, right? I mean, like probably 30-40% of jails locally that the sheriff's department's running are state probation violations even. Okay. But the problem is in a lot of rural areas, you don't have any retirement options if you're a sheriff's deputy. So like who wants to go make $15 an hour and put their life on the line? And you're never going to be able to make a career of it. You're never going to have an option at retirement. So personally, I think the state, given that we require sheriff's departments to do so much for us as a state, we ought to be funding and a retirement system for them. You know, I mean, in the past, I think legislatures have tried to mandate that to the local county commissions, where the local taxpayer is responsible for it. But I think it should certainly be a state responsibility, and state money ought to be going to that. So
especially for
those
state
two
patrol.
areas of retirement, when it comes to law enforcement. And I want to tell you too, guys, part of the reason I'm so adamant about fighting hard for law enforcement, and when I was talking about the Chamber of Commerce earlier, with that $100,000 that was spent against me, they all said that I was anti-law enforcement. Okay. So I was going door to door, knocking on people's door, and they're like, Colton, why am I getting this flyer that says you're anti-law enforcement? And I'm like, look at the address that it came from. It didn't come from some law enforcement agency. It came from this subsidy of the Chamber of Commerce. So it's my goal to be the #1 law enforcement legislator in Atlanta. Starts with two functions of retirement.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it.
I really do. So we've got something else that has been making headlines. Although I will say a lot of our viewers may not have seen this because it made headlines in a kind of more of a liberal publication, that being the AJC. But it is that up on the chopping block this year is potentially are the special state tax credits. They're looking at taking away the ability for the state to issue out tax credits for businesses coming in, but they're also looking at potentially just putting restrictions on them and not limiting them altogether. So what is your stance on this? And from what I understand, you have some legislation that you're looking at potentially.
Yeah, no, I'm going to ask you two guys to help me make a decision on some legislation here in just a second, but let me paint a picture for you. If you take all of the tax credits that we currently have, we're looking at like $8 billion with a B, okay, and tax liabilities. So those are indirect subsidies. That's money we will never receive as a government, right? Which ultimately, if the government never receives that money, that means all of our taxes end up being higher because we've got to subsidize these corporations. So, you know, I've explained this on your show in the past, but they're indirect subsidies in the sense that they're transferable. So when you think of a tax credit, a lot of folks just think, oh, a company's getting a discount on their taxes. No, it's far more sinister, because what they do is they say, well, we spend X amount of dollars in the state. Well, here comes the state with like a 30% tax credit in the case of the film industry. Now, they get to sell that to whoever they want. So they go spend $100,000, they get a $30,000 tax credit. Now, the going rate on the market is probably 90 cents on the dollar. So now they can go sell this piece of paper, okay, for $27,000. They put that in their pocket. They can leave the state. They go to California. They can go wherever they want. Meanwhile, the Department of Revenue in Georgia gets this worthless piece of paper. You can't fund law enforcement retirement with a tax credit. Not possible, okay? It has no value other than the one who sold it. This is extremely dangerous. Think about this. Like, for me, the #1 proper role of government, like where tax dollars should be going first and foremost, is in infrastructure and transportation. Okay.
Absolutely.
You go back to the ancient Romans, the ancient Syrians, they used every tax dollar they had on infrastructure. The cost of aggregates, the cost of asphalt, the cost of construction materials in general have went up about 30 or 40% due to Joe Biden's inflation. Okay. Has the state transportation budget went up 30 or 40%? No, it hasn't. But these film tax credits and everything else has. So, you know what, guys? I mean, I've got 3 pieces of legislation, and maybe you guys can tell me which one to bring on. The first one is a resolution to rename the state of Georgia to the state of Hollywood, because that's what we're becoming. Okay. The second is a total nuclear meltdown when it comes to the film tax credits. I got a piece of legislation drafted up that ends the film tax credits today and makes everybody who has one come in and cash it in. The only problem with that is it shortfalls the budget big time, okay? Like $4 billion, which maybe the legislature needs to feel some punitive damages for even putting us in this situation to begin with. So that's the nuclear meltdown. Then we've got another piece that just turns off the spigot. So if you think of this thing as a nuclear reactor, there's another way to kind of slow it down. And that's the one I think we'll probably submit and probably get some traction on. But it stops all the tax credits today. And if you have one, you have the right. We're not going to renege on the offer that we originally gave you. You have the right to turn it in at a future point. But we've got to stop this dead in its tracks. And, Chuck and I both are working on this. So all of Floyd County's representation in the Senate, we are both gung-ho about eliminating these tax credits.
Yeah,
I like it.
I really like that third option because we got to stop it now. We don't want to renege on it, but if we stop it now, then we can work at something that can, balance the budget across the state and then continue to make good decisions.
That's right.
Yeah. So you think about this, there are $8 billion worth of these outstanding tax credits out there. We only have a surplus of $6 billion. So if they come in next year and cash all of these in, there goes that surplus, and the fact that we are now in a windfall of $2 billion statewide.
Right.
So, I mean, it could literally crash the entire economic sphere of the state of Georgia.
Yeah. Yeah, very well could.
So
And
I like it.
I don't think the founders of any government ever intended the government to, be subsidizing a big industry like this.
Well, yeah, and I think, I'm just curious as to how we got here from that piece of legislation, though. I mean, I think the intent originally was to be positive, to bring an industry here, but I think people have taken advantage of it.
No, absolutely. Yeah, there was no guardrails ever attached to it, and it just kept getting bigger. I think when it first started, it was only like 10%, and then you got some film lobbyists, probably some beautiful Hollywood girls start showing up, and next thing you know, this thing's 30%. And I think to get from 20% to 30%, all you have to do is add a peach to the end of the film, to your credits.
Yeah,
you get another 10%. And then you hear these stories, where people they get something manufactured in New York and then they ship it down and then they use it in the movie. Well, then they're getting a tax credit for the manufacturing in New York and the shipping both ways. Well, we filmed we got a rock manufactured in New York, but it was in the movie in Georgia. So we're going to cash it in on a film. There wasn't even any auditing when this thing first got started. And to my understanding, in the last legislative session or so, they added an auditing element to this.
Wow.
Yeah.
I would be interested in, just from the perspective of continuing to keep Georgia as the new Hollywood, and maybe even influencing some of those folks that are coming here rather than the other way around, them influencing us as they're coming here. One of the aspects I read was the removal of the potential to sell these tax credits outside the state of Georgia. It has to be a company that does work exclusively in Georgia for them to be able to have these tax credits.
Yeah, that is another proposal that's come up, just removing the transferability.
Mm-hmm.
And that essentially kills it. But to me, I mean, look, a visitor you guys, or a guest that you need to have on your show, is this guy named J.C. Bradbury. Okay. And he was a professor at Kennesaw State University, an economist. He's the only person in the university system of Georgia who's ever called this out for what it is. And his white paper, you can go online and look it up. Maybe you guys can get a link to it later on. Mm-hmm. But basically, the film industry, I don't think they use, but less than 5% of the film industry actually use their own tax credits. The rest of them are transferred out, And think about this, a film may come in and they may lose money. They may lose money on it, but we're still subsidizing them 30%.
Well, I guess they're gaining money from selling the tax credits off.
That's right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, they could be at a loss, and ultimately there is a possibility we could be the only thing that makes them profitable.
Yep.
So
wild.
Yeah. So I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole with the Crocodile Dundee film series. And it's kind of the whole idea for the third plot, or the plot of the third movie, was that although these movie industries were making these just terribly horrible profit-losing films, they were still gaining money and making money by doing some very shady business. And it sounds exactly like what's going on here. they
Yeah.
have Crocodile Dunditas.
Well, yeah, I'll start using that reference around the Capitol and see if anybody else
See
picks up
anybody
on
picks
it.
up the reference.
Well, you guys don't
See
watch
who's seen the
conservative
movie.
talk? You don't know about the Crocodile Dundee reference?
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, that's I think that's a very spot on reference for that one.
That is.
So we got another one that's near and dear to my friend's heart here.
Big time.
One that's coming up that I know that he's
very concerned
yes.
about. So
Go
I
ahead.
have to ask, and I'm gonna steal this line from a friend of mine, but
Hey guys, I just lost you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you.
Yeah. Can you hear us?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you now.
So I'm gonna steal this line from a friend of mine, and the true way of growing wealth is equity and home ownership here in America. And we've seen now last session and now that there's a bill for build to rent product to come in. And I just want to get your thoughts on it. And what do you think about these build to rent subdivisions that they're trying to build out?
Okay, so I've heard a little bit about it, and you fill in because this is all I know. I know that there's some big developments going up around the state, and the sole purpose of these developments is to rent out, the housing. And I guess some communities are trying to stop this. Can you fill in anything else?
Yeah, so here's kind of the problem, right? It'll look like a subdivision, but
Okay.
it's not a platted subdivision. So people will be in a neighborhood, but they'll be renting it. So what's really happening is these are detached apartment complexes. So
I see.
the idea of these people actually owning these homes, individuals coming in and being home owners is now taking away, and we're still using up the same amount of land.
Yeah, I mean, from a principled standpoint, it would be difficult for me, to say that I'm going to tell you what you can and can't do with your property as an investment.
Yep.
I come from a county that we don't even have zoning.
Gotta move.
I mean, you can go build the biggest skyscraper you want in Dade County. We don't even have zoning. And a lot of folks have fought really hard to keep that over time.
Yeah.
And
to
me, it's like, you made the investment, you purchased the property, you're taking all the risk. You ought to be able to build whatever you want to build.
Now, part of the issue that's going on with this is it's some of the times that it's not American citizens that are doing this.
Well, not only that, so like these are big corporations that are still coming in and profiting off of Georgians who will never be able to own a home, or instead of trying to find a way to allow for these people to eventually purchase this home, it's just basically an apartment complex. They'll just be there the entire time. It's just disheartening to a certain degree. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. Like if someone wants to sell their property, they should have every right. They should have every right to purchase the property and do whatever they want to with it. But I think we still need to instill the value of home ownership as the driving source of what it means to truly start a family and grow into that.
No, absolutely. I mean, there's a housing shortage. There's no doubt about it. But it's like, what put us into this position? And look at the inflation, look at the downside that the economy has taken. I mean, our generation, guys, like, is projected to be poorer than our parents.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Like, and that's the first time that's happened in American history.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and part of that is because we haven't been able to solve, how we fix housing. That for a lot of people, purchasing your home is going to be your largest investment and your largest return on your investment and in your equity. Right. And so it's just going to be interesting how we shake this out.
So what's the phrase of that song? Buy dirt.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's a lot of country music songs about buy dirt.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a very I would say that's something that I personally myself would be wholeheartedly against these if it were individuals that were coming in and that were redeveloping this area and creating homes that people then could come in and buy for their own ability to further themselves, as opposed to making these essentially these rented units that will never change they, as we've seen across time or here lately, for one thing, rentals typically depreciate
Faster.
and fall down and just collapse and just deteriorate a lot faster than what actual homes that are owned by individuals that have invested interest in that home. So
It's
we could potentially see these big developments in these areas that are really depreciating the land around them because they're falling apart themselves because these industries aren't keeping up these areas, and that really impact rural Georgia.
it's kind of more psychological than anything, right? Because I don't want to blame the property owner nor the renter, but I mean, like when you're renting it and you're having to pay for your own home as well as your rental property, that can be costly. On top of the fact of there's a lack of just psychological, like not feeling as responsible. Let's just put it that way. When you're renting for something because you don't have that ownership, you don't have that same vested interest in it. And so I think that's the thing that we need to make sure that we kind of keep, especially in rural Georgia, is we miss the days of, you're talking about we're going to be poorer than our parents. We miss the days of where we'll be able to pass on land and pass on property to the next generation because of things like this.
Oh yeah.
That's just something that I'm wholeheartedly wanting to protect.
Yeah, I mean, think about like if you look at the biggest home builders in our area and across the country, it's like they've taken their resources and they've stopped building homes as much, and they're building apartment complexes, right? Or these complexes that you're talking about, and it's ultimately because it's getting harder and harder to sell a house.
Yeah,
people can't afford the house.
Yes.
So they're having to. I mean, it's just a telltale sign of a poor economy, a poor society.
Yeah, it really is. It's that is the hallmark of a prosperous society, whether or not the percentage of home ownership is up or down.
Yeah. I mean, and then we keep hearing at the Capitol, and I just have to roll my eyes every time I hear it, that we're the #1 state to do business in. And I mean, you ask some of these elected officials, I'm like, do you really believe that? You really believe we're the #1? Well, yeah, that's what we're the 9th. It's the 9th year in a row. And it's like, it's a magazine that's an industrial development magazine that put that together. That's saying we're the #1 state to do business in. And it's like, as long as we keep believing that, we never will be.
Oh yeah.
How do you tell that to a shop owner, in Northwest Georgia, who at the end of the year is packing up all their inventory and shipping it across the state so they don't have to pay inventory tax?
Yeah.
Am I going to tell that man this is the #1 state to do business in? It's hard to do that.
Oh yeah. Well, if I'm not mistaken, the reason why Georgia is the #1 state to do business in is because of we are the financial hub center of the world. All the financial transactions that come in and out through any sort of online purchase or anything along that line, it all comes to Atlanta.
That's a part of it, and our tech village has grown. There's a lot of things that contribute to that, and industry is growing here. We're doing great to start more small businesses, and I will say, for better or worse, I think we're doing a great job in growing industry here in Georgia and bringing industry here to Georgia. But that being said, we have to be mindful of outside industries and how they can change. Like with housing, just because there's a certain name on an LLC doesn't mean you can't trace it back to Japan or China, who are some of the largest home builders.
Now, I'm totally in favor of eliminating land ownership from foreign entities, especially our enemies. Like, let's just put a list together, right? I mean, Iran, Russia, China. Like, there's no reason why they should be buying property in Georgia at all.
And well, the thing about it is, for me too, is, I mean, like, we can't do that in their country, or we have to go through extra hoops. Like, you go to China, 51% of any company that even it started in America has to be owned by a Chinese citizen.
That's right.
If you want to move the business there. So they'll just have an LLC. They'll put someone who's a Chinese nationalist at the head of the table, and then they'll still call it the American company name when it's not anymore.
And if I'm not mistaken, so Georgia's, well, one of the leading industries in Georgia is timber. And if I'm not mistaken, Germany actually has a very significant hold on that industry here in the state of Georgia. They own more forest or timberland than any other country or entity around. Yeah. and it's particularly significant around Northwest Georgia.
Yeah, well,
And to
I'm
be
sorry.
I lost
Mhm.
guys again. You still there?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, there we go.
we got you. We're here.
Okay, I can hear you now.
It's that downtown Atlanta Wi-Fi.
Well, I was just going to say, I hadn't heard that about
Yeah.
timber, but I know we're losing a lot of agricultural land because of that.
Very much so.
And you have foreign entities coming in and buying up, chicken farms
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
a lot of farms that just again that can't be passed down because of all the things that we've been talking about. So I think we got to go back to putting Georgians first and figuring out a way to fix our housing, fix our economy in the sense of being able to make transfers of property amongst family a little bit easier.
That's right. No, absolutely.
I'm believe that I read this correctly not too terribly long ago, but if I'm not mistaken, California actually doesn't allow foreign countries to come in and purchase industrial land to use it to benefit their other.
Because
home
they had a
countries.
big problem with that. Early
California
on.
does this. Mm-hmm.
They had a big problem with that early on. All right, so let's talk about gambling.
Yeah.
I know that's a hot topic down there, especially in the Senate. So let's get your stake on like where it's at and what's going on.
Jamie and I have some very opposing views on this.
Yeah. Yeah. So does everyone else in the Senate.
Good.
I don't think it's any different than what it's always been in the last, since I've been around Georgia politics, there's always been this question, what's going to happen to gambling this year? Okay. Excuse me. There are a lot of lobbyists who are taking legislators out to really nice dinners and in order to convince them to support gambling. Back where I come from, the push is not even to even put it on the ballot, right? Because I think most folks in Northwest Georgia know that if you give it to the people in the ballot, like it would pass. Okay. And the people I represent, you got to think about all the different churches and everything else that come to me and say, no, we don't want this to be put on the ballot at all. And then at the same token, though, I've got a lot of folks coming to me and they're like, listen, we don't want full legalization of like a casino or, something like that. But we really would like to do some sports betting on a cell phone, in which I tell them, why wouldn't you just download a VPN and just pop yourself up, in Nevada and do your sports betting that way? Then the other thing is horse racing, which is a big industry in itself.
Yep.
And if anybody should be excited about horse racing, it should probably be me in the sense that, the auctioneers that sell the purebred horses and all the thoroughbreds, those guys in that industry probably make more than the regular racetrack, just off in commissions and selling the horses. So one would think that I would have a real incentive to push horse racing. Personally, I don't see myself voting for any type of gambling when it comes to casinos or horse racing.
At least we have somebody who has some sense.
Well, my whole thing goes back to the property rights. It goes back to the property right issue.
Yeah.
I can argue it for housing same way. I can argue against it for apartment complexes the same way that I can argue for we should be able to tell someone what to do. I don't personally gamble.
Jamie, you are a libertarian, huh?
Yeah, you know what I mean? I personally don't gamble though. So that I think that's why it makes it interesting for me is like I don't even buy lottery tickets.
It just depends on the day of how he's feeling about things. So
yeah.
No, I just that's it, period.
Yeah, if the vote came before me today, I wouldn't be voting for it. So
yeah, it's definitely something that has continued to rear its head yearly, especially over the past I would say 4 years. It's really become a very almost kind of defining moment. It comes down to the last night of sine die that
it always does.
That big push to try and get it through. But I personally have to say that it's not something that I would like to see come through, just because of the fact that we see a lot of a lot of the downfall that comes with that. Yes, there are some financial benefits when it comes to the online sports bettings, but when you look at what happens around these areas or around the facilities like the horse racing tracks, yeah, they try and keep it up from within the immediate area, but you look outside the actual immediate area of where these are, they're just derelict, just horrible places to live a life, to really bring any sort of a family unit into. And the fact that you're making sports betting that much easier, you're really fueling the addiction rates of a generation like what we were talking about a little bit earlier, being the least wealthiest. You're fueling that addiction rate into having these people funnel all of their hopes and aspirations into winning big on the big game and hitting those odds and potentially being able to get out of this slump to where they are able to have as much, if not more, than what their parents.
Yeah, but I just can't dictate somebody's life like that. Here's the thing, right? Somewhere around Atlanta Motor Speedway, or sports betting, or a horse track, I don't see that. I'm not going to participate because I don't gamble. But me trying to say that shouldn't go to the people, I just have a problem with that. Let the people decide. Even if it was something like Sunday sales, like, you know what I mean? Like, take it by county basis and let the county decide.
You're just interested in having the Sunday sales because you drink on Sundays.
So Jamie, like, you say just take it to the people.
Yeah.
Or at least from what he's, the last part of what he said, at least county by county.
Yeah, I mean, that's again similar to Sunday sales, because then you'll have areas that will absolutely wholeheartedly. I don't think Northwest Georgia would allow it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At all. And I feel like
I don't know if Floyd County might.
We'd be safe to say that the majority of Northwest Georgia would wholeheartedly turn it down. But there are other areas that, you know what I mean, that may be what their region wants. And I think that's, I think it's just one of those things that for the people to decide. It's not for anybody else.
So let me tell you, I cannot confirm this, but this is something that I have heard here at the Capitol. Okay. And it's a very interesting situation. So I need to dig in more. I probably even shouldn't be even talking about it because I don't know for sure the details. But in Cherokee County, just in the northern part, there's like 14,000 contiguous acres, okay, that's owned by one family. Now, This family apparently got this property like when it was taken away from the Cherokee, okay? So like they won it in like the land lottery or whatever, okay? And they've had the property like since then. Now, it's like a state, like natural resources, place to go hunting, wildlife refuge, if you will. But the family's looking at selling it. And I've also heard that since they're looking at selling it, potentially the Cherokee Nation could come down and buy it, and they'd have 14,000 acres just north of Atlanta. You could build a runway on it, a massive casino. They could build whatever they wanted, being a Cherokee Nation on that land. So
that throws it into a little bit different area of jurisdictional issues, because then it becomes a federal hot potato as opposed to
it becomes a nation within a nation.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting concept.
Yeah, it would be.
A nation within the nation. Well, I guess I could potentially
it's like
profit
Oklahoma.
from that.
It's like Oklahoma.
Well, fair enough. Oh man. Well, so we've got one last topic that we're wanting to toss towards you and get your input and ideas on. And it's not really something that's Georgia exclusive. It's something that has been developing the country as a whole.
And speaking of a nation in a nation.
Yeah, and that being the issue of our country being flooded with illegal immigrants.
Oh,
Yes, and we are Georgia, especially Northwest Georgia, and
We need a whole nother podcast just for this one question, guys.
Exactly.
Bring this one up on me here in the last part of the podcast.
Well, I know one of your constituents has really pushed for a lot of relief to be given to these illegal immigrants. A particular state representative, and they are, they're really wanting to give these illegal immigrants the ability to attend public schools for free. And I know that Northwest Georgia in of itself has just said absolutely not. But I want to get your take on what's going on with that. Not just the school issue, but on what Georgia's role is in the whole illegal immigration and the flooding of our southern border.
Yeah, I don't know where to start. Let me tell you, this will be one of the defining metrics of any politician, how they stand on this issue in the next decade. Okay, this is something that's still developing, but I think it's one of the most important issues of our time. And they say every town is a border town. And I used to kind of roll my eyes at that and think, yeah, I mean, that's just what those people down on the border say. But let me tell you what, every town is a border town. And if you live in Northwest Georgia and you don't see it in your community, you just wait. It's going to get there.
Oh, yeah.
Coming from Dade County, where I come from, it's already a little more rampant in the sense that Governor Abbott's buses were cruising through town, and some of those buses were stopping and letting folks off. But there's also the human trafficking migrant part of it.
Yes.
Okay. My parents bought another house, and from the house that I grew up in, and my childhood home, they use it as an Airbnb. Okay. And my dad walks outside one night. This is in September, gentlemen. Okay. My dad walks outside one night, and there's like 20 Venezuelans walking around the front yard. Okay. They all have brand new clothes, but no luggage. And they don't claim to know any English. Okay. These people were clearly from a third world. Okay. They were taking pots and pans with plastic handles on them, putting them into the barbecue grill and into the oven and melting the plastic. Okay. So maybe they only have, good cast iron skillets where they come from, but in the
Sounds
Airbnb, we had plastic handles and they were being melted. Okay. They rented this as like, what appeared to be like a little Texas family. Okay. We finally got them out. The house was ransacked. Okay. Absolutely ransacked. They only had one review when they booked it. By the time they left, that account had 5 reviews, all within the Chattanooga area. So if we consider there were 20 in that house and they got 5 other rental units going on that weekend, there's 100 people. That cartel migrant train was moving through. Okay. I've made a pretty good relationship. Got a pretty good relationship with a couple representatives in Texas. And I was talking to one of these guys at a recent political conference. And he said that, a good way to describe it is back when Trump was president, it would cost like $2,000 or $3,000 for somebody to go across the border. That's what you'd have to pay the cartel. Today, it's like $10,000 to $15,000. Now, some of these people, okay, they haven't seen $15,000 in 3 generations.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they are poor, broke, and damned. Right. You can't blame the migrant. And I think that's where we as Republicans mess up a lot of times, right? Is if we think in a heartfelt way, you feel sorry for these people. They're obviously fighting for a better life. But what we can't forget is that they're having to hire a cartel to come across the border. Now, if they haven't seen $15,000 in 3 generations, how else do they pay for it other than becoming an indentured servant? Okay,
Yeah.
So we've got these sharp-dressed guys running around South Texas right now, and they'll go up to businesses and industries. They might go up to a local Mexican restaurant, okay? And then They say, hey, we're going to give you all these employees at 1/10 of the cost. You know, the cartel is a mafia, in case anybody hadn't figured that out yet. So I would hate to be a migrant who just, indentured servituded myself for $15,000 and then work as an indentured servant and hope that they're keeping a good tally on their T-charts and their accountant's up to speed and knows when I paid off that $15,000. Or else what do? They probably go back home to their families in Mexico and threaten them and just have them continue to work. Like we're taking ourselves back to the 1800s. Okay. And these people, they're finding their ways into Georgia. Think about this. In Chattooga County, okay, in the 9th grade, just this year, they've had like 20 students show up who don't know English and may have like a 4th grade reading level. Okay, so how do we as taxpayers expect to fund a school? How do we expect our teachers who are supposed to be teaching, to the middle of the classroom, the smartest kids and maybe the least smartest kids, but you're going to inject these people who don't even know the same language and aren't even up to speed? But the Supreme Court says that we have to teach them. Catoosa County's 50 or more, okay, of these students who are not American citizens, who don't know English, who are coming with the Great Migration, right? We as a state, I was reading one report the other day that said the state of Georgia, it costs us about $2.5 billion. $2.5 billion, okay? And that's hospitals, that's schools, that's resources in general to take care of the current migrant crisis. I was talking to a state trooper the other day, guys. He said, back when Trump was president, he goes, we could pull over a truck on Interstate 20. It'd be full of migrants. We could call up ICE. They'd get it sorted. They get them deported. Done deal. Today, we don't even call ICE. And if we do, they don't show up. All we can do is just let them out onto the streets. I mean, we're in a very difficult situation. And, the governor's at the World Economic Forum, and he's saying, secure the dang border, right? When he first ran for governor, he says, I got a big truck so I can carry off criminal illegals myself. But there's not a dollar in this current budget to secure our border. Now, people say, well, how do you spend taxpayer money and secure the border? I think the first thing we need to do is we need to fund our attorney general to sue ICE for that $2.5 billion that this crisis is costing us. I think we ought to be spending money on the wall. Texas has already said, yeah, we'll start building some wall. We ought to be sending money to Texas and then send a bill, an invoice up to D.C. and say, pay it. And then take somebody like Ron DeSantis, who's going to run for president. And if we had a big fat invoice up in D.C., I guarantee you he'd be campaigning to Georgians. As soon as I become president, we're going to get that invoice paid for you. And maybe we should add an interest rate to it, the same that the IRS charges us interest when we don't pay on time. So anyway, get my blood pressure up. But
no, I hear you. And I mean, it is hard. I mean, it's a hard conversation because like someone like me, I understand that it's we have to find a way to fix immigration. And at the same time, I can't blame the kids.
That's right.
So then as a taxpayer, how do we fix that to where every child has a right to education?
That's right.
And that's just a wholehearted belief. It's not the kid's fault. But when the kid comes in, like you said, and they're behind, how do we as a community try to figure out a way to address that?
Right.
Because if ICE isn't going to do anything to help with the parents, how can we help the child? And how can we figure out how to stop this? Because people are being indentured, they're indentured servants. That's the only way they can make it.
Yeah, right. And I agree with every aspect of that. Although I will say part of that, and this whole push to having all of these folks that have already illegally crossed our border to be essentially made full-fledged citizens, especially with some of the DACA recipients, the fact that the majority of the people that crossed under Obama's tenure and that received this DACA protection, they haven't even filed for citizenship.
And that's the thing for me.
They've just been sitting there on their hands they
That's
haven't actually done it to take the step to become citizens, knowing full well, and the vast majority of them know that they are not citizens.
The process has to be revamped, but like people have to want to be citizens. Like there isn't a okay, you can be here full amnesty. You don't have to
Mhm.
go through the process. You don't have to like become a citizen. Like, no, if you're going to be here as a permanent resident, then there needs to be some form of a process and some willingness, or, you know, the visa needs to expire.
Mhm.
But this has to, I mean,
Some assimilation.
we have to find a way to make this a meaningful stance.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we're going to lose 2 generations.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's already too late in many respects.
Without a doubt. I mean, we're double numbers of what we were 2 years ago when it comes to illegal immigration.
We'll never
And
be
it-
able to
and it-
process that many cases in a court of law.
Well,
never
They'll
be able
never
to.
have their day of
They'll
justice.
never be able to.
I would say that is not entirely true. I would say you put a moratorium on all immigration and all
But they're already breaking the law.
secure it. We'll secure it.
I mean,
Well,
you know what I'm saying?
actually secure the border, stop any of the illegal immigration coming out, put a moratorium on any incoming immigration, begin processing all those that are here, and any that you find immediately expel.
We'd still never catch up. That's like, you know, so
You'd make a
when we
massive
talk
dent in it.
about, well, here's the thing, right? When we talk about building a house, right? Construction hours are from a certain time to a certain time.
Mhm.
If you catch me. That's how I look at it with immigration. Like, you know what I mean? Like we can put it in place, but it's on us to try to figure out what the process really needs to look like and implement it. We can put a moratorium on there, but they're still going to do it until we actually find a way to secure the border, find a way to actually enforce it, and find an easier process for people who actually want to go through citizenship to actually make it.
And I don't disagree with that. Although I will say, when you were talking there, if I catch you, the process of that needs to be, when I do catch you, needs to be the most severe penalties out there.
Need to go
for
back.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think the quickest way to stop it would be the governor of Texas just to put a vehicle inspection on every vehicle crossing the border. Okay.
Not a bad idea.
And just be real delayed about doing it. Do it real government-like, you know,
Yeah.
make it
I mean,
not
that's real
efficient.
smart.
Mhm.
And
You
you,
know
would
about that, don't
shut
you, James?
Mexico's economy down. They would
Yep.
they wouldn't be trading bananas, right?
Yeah,
They
I
wouldn't
mean,
be
well,
sending us
that's the
agave.
key, right? Because it's
Right.
it's not the ones that are coming here for the right reasons and
Mhm.
getting citizenship that's the problem. It's the ones who are coming here with no intention to becoming a U.S. citizen, only to take money back to Mexico.
Yeah, just
Yeah,
stop all
this is
wire
what I
transfers
worry
up
about the
to Mexico.
most. I worry about the cartel coming into town with a bunch of people as indentured servants, taking away all of our Georgian and American jobs, putting their indentured servants in there and wrecking our economy. You know, and look at what they do when it comes to prostitution and child trafficking and all that. These are not good people. Okay. And I mean, they're potentially the biggest mafia to ever exist. I mean, they got their own ammo factory, their own machine gun factory. They got Gen 4 armored vehicles. I mean, they're a military in themselves.
You got the Bank of China funding them.
And
Yeah.
you've got them getting Chinese shipments directly and making fentanyl here in Mexico and then shipping it directly.
Well, the
across
central
the border.
banking system also, you know, it was found out that HSBC was laundering money for the cartel. The central banking system found out, and only punishment was they wrote a letter admitting it and paid a fine. Didn't stop. Wrote a letter admitting it and paid a fine.
Yeah.
That, like, those are the things that I have a hard time with, because we see these things, or we see the issue where, you know, like you're saying with ICE, and we know exactly what we can do to stop those things immediately, but no one's doing it. We know that the best thing for Congress to do is to take immigration and write a new bill and pass something meaningful, but they're not doing it because they don't want to.
Although I will say, in order, a part of that new bill that needs to come through needs to be the moratorium to stop any of the immigration coming through until we reduce and eliminate the backlog of what's already there. Without reducing or eliminating that backlog, all you're going to do is continue to grow it and make it even more complex.
Yeah, but Justin, do you have faith in our federal government they can get something like that done?
I know. That's why I didn't say anything.
Under the correct leadership,
Like,
I have faith in just about anybody. I mean, here in Georgia, we put our faith in you guys, and y'all haven't let us down too terribly bad so far.
Well, I know. I wish
That's a good recovery.
Yeah, yeah. You got to run for office with that kind of recovery.
Yeah, you know what I mean. like you went full politician there. That was good.
And that's coming. Wow, that's a lot coming from you.
Yeah. No, I mean we got to get focused on our state politics. I mean, I'm losing faith in our federal government day after day. I mean, look how many felons they're about to make with the pistol braces.
Yeah, that's
right. I mean,
speaking of which, that actually brings up something else, and I can't believe I forgot to even include this in this deal. SAPA.
Yeah.
Where you stand on that, and how's it going to get through this year?
So I'm the leader on it.
I'd
in the
expect
Senate,
nothing less.
I'm the first sponsor on Second Amendment Preservation Act. If in case you don't know what SAPA is, Second Amendment Preservation Act, and still gathering up a few signatures now. There's some key folks I'd like to have sign it. The chairman of the Judiciary Committee, a great attorney who can speak to it very strongly. I'd love to have one of Governor Kemp's floor leaders sign on to it. That'd be great. So I'm trying to lobby the bill right now and get some really good signatures on it. But ultimately, like, this thing needs to be passed quick. Okay, this isn't like constitutional carry where it's like a want to. This thing it's urgent, because when you've got an all-powerful King Biden, who's just going to, with a stroke of a pen, potentially, no telling how many. I don't know how many people own, the potential 40 million pistol braces that are out there. But I'm going to say there's a few million people who are going to be made felons.
Hey,
right?
they all fell off in the boating accident.
No,
That's right. That's right. And that's ridiculous that they have to fall off in the boating accident like that.
Yeah.
So basically what the Second Amendment Preservation Act does is it says to the federal government that they're going to be responsible for coming in and enforcing these things. It says that regardless of whether it's an executive order from the president, a rule change by the ATF, or a law by the Congress, doesn't matter. Feds, you're going to be responsible for enforcing it, because we're not going to put state law enforcement, our municipal police, our sheriff's officers, the GBI, anybody like that. We're not going to put them in the crosshairs of our citizens to go out here and enforce those dumb things. And there's some teeth in it, because, like, one of my talking points are sheriffs in my neck of the woods. Hey, they campaign on the fact that they want to protect the Second Amendment. So not much to worry about there. But these inner city, you get some liberal mayor who's running a police department who says, I'm going to go in and take all these citizens' guns. Those citizens under Second Amendment Preservation Act will have the right to sue that department. Okay. So then it gives the officer an option to say, hey, I can't do that because my department's going to get sued.
I mean, you could also throw in the fact that they could potentially have all state funding removed from that department as well if they do and try to move forward and enforce these.
Now, I would be in favor of that. Unfortunately, I don't think the other half of the caucus will be.
I don't know about that.
And so it's passed in two places. The Second Amendment Preservation Act is passed in Missouri and it's passed in Wyoming. The big difference was in Wyoming, they put a criminal element. So they said the officer could be charged criminally. Well, that's never going to happen in Georgia, right? You're never going to convince one law enforcement agency to charge another law enforcement agency. Okay, so that's not going to work. But in Missouri, with the civil, you're putting all the power into the people's hands, and you're not going after the police officer themselves. You're just going after the department who allowed it to happen.
I like it.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, think about this. We've got 25 days, I guess, or so of session left, maybe a little bit more. I don't really know. But we only got 40 days of session. Like, if we don't get this passed in the next 40 days, then for the next year, Joe Biden can just go sign a bunch of executive orders, and there's nothing to protect us as Georgia citizens.
It puts things a little bit into perspective there.
Big time.
Yeah.
Because it's almost February and y'all are done in March. You know what I mean?
Right. March 29th.
Yep.
Whew. So if I'm not mistaken, I I know Texas hadn't passed this law specifically, but one of the things that really caught my attention with what they had done was what they had passed as far as the suppressors, and anything that was made in Texas, as long as it stayed within Texas, was essentially legal.
Yeah.
Is that something that
No, I would be in favor of that. There is a suppressor manufacturer in my home county of Dade, Liberty
sure is?
Suppressors.
Yep, great
Um,
place.
you know, we commonly talk about industry coming into schools to help teach. I remember being in high school in the engineering class, and we had Liberty Suppressor guys in there, telling us how it was done.
Teaching metal shop, I love it.
That would be absolutely amazing. I would love that.
Yeah.
We'd have nothing like that.
Back when public education was better.
Yeah.
Like what?
But there again, they also don't have zoning, so they are a lot better.
That got me excited though. I can build a gun in school and get credit for it.
Not just a gun, but a suppressor.
Full-out suppressor. Yeah.
An NFA item.
The whole thing.
Yeah.
And then blow something up.
Yeah, the history on suppressors is pretty interesting. It's
really
my understanding. If you go over to Europe, you go over to England, and you go fox hunting. It's considered courteous. It's even, I think, required by law that you have a suppressor on your weapon, because you don't want to
shotgun.
Yep.
You don't want to insult your neighbor.
Yeah.
The deal in America, though, is apparently like during the Great Depression, people were running around, shooting rabbits and whatever kind of food they could bring up. And so certain property owners were getting mad about it. And they're like, they got their suppressors on their guns, and I can't hear when they're shooting the cottontails on the back 40. So apparently it wasn't necessarily a gangster thing as much as it was people fighting for food.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they were taking their food that was on their
rolled up
land.
in it.
Yeah, they couldn't stop them because they were hiding in the woods hitting.
Yeah, it just got rolled up in the whole fully automatic weapon. I guess disastrous image there.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well,
guys,
Colton,
it's been a great podcast.
It has, and we
always.
Have,
it's awesome when you come on.
We have enjoyed it thoroughly. It's been incredibly informative.
No doubt about it. So yeah. Have me on again before the end of session, and I'll give you guys another honest take on what I'm experiencing down here. And, just remind the folks watching, as Alex de Tocqueville said, we're going to get the type of government we deserve. And if we don't get involved in it, we don't deserve very much. So I encourage you to get involved in the Floyd County GOP with Jamie, and go make a difference for our world.
Hang on 1 second real fast.
Yes, sir.
What's he grabbing up?
Hey, is that the book Democracy? I can't see. Is that what it is?
Yeah, I keep that handy.
All right. Good deal. That's a Patriot.
Again, thank you, Colton. Thank you for coming
absolutely,
on.
gentlemen.
Thank you for what you're doing down there,
Mm-hmm.
and we will definitely have you on again before the end of session.
Yeah,
right.
we'll have to make it a point, especially after crossover day, to see what made it across and what's actually going to be looking like what's going to be law.
Yep,
coming in.
All right, sounds good, gentlemen. We'll see you later.
Right. We'll see you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And with that in mind, we do like to take a moment to remind our viewers to make sure they are hitting the like button and the share button on all the content they do see that we have released, as well as making sure that they go and hit the subscribe button as well. So you'll always be able to stay up to date on all of these interviews that Jamie and I do have that we release and put out. You'll always be able to see Jamie's heartwarming smile and hear that incredibly infectious laughter. We also want to take a quick moment to say thank you to our affiliates, Net News Network. You can find Net News Network at netnewsnetwork.net, as well as Veterans for America First and their media arm, Vet Voice. So with that in mind, Jamie, do you have any final thoughts for tonight?
Only final thought is I kind of want to repeat what Colt said was remember that municipal elections are coming up. We're starting the convention cycle for the Republican and conservative movement. So February 11th, March 11th, April 22nd, and then if you make it out that way, June 9th and 10th. Just remember those dates. You'll be hearing a lot more about them.
No, outstanding. Absolutely. And I want to say a quick thank you again to Colton. And this is Conservative Talk, and we'll see y'all soon.